I study horses, beauty matched only by their strength.
We're going to be shooting a bunch of segments called Do You Know Where You Are in the Hoof? I feel like knowing where you are in the hoof is one of the biggest things that separates an experienced shoer from an inexperienced shoer. And the more experience you get, the more precisely you know where you are in relationship to all the sensitive structures and the biomechanics. So we're here at Two Mountains Farm with Miss Bella, looking and explaining the difference between horizontal length and vertical growth and how we use that to help us establish where we are in the hoof. This foot is a great example of too much horizontal and too little vertical growth. And it has a long toe, low heel syndrome, which we as farriers and owners are all too familiar with. And I would say is the most common problem we come across, a low heel, long toe. And what that ends up being usually is too little vertical depth and too much horizontal length. This foot here is a classic example of too little vertical length and too much horizontal growth. And how we look at that is there's not enough distance below the coffin bone in a vertical direction, but there's too much length in front of the coffin bone in a horizontal direction. And we need to reorient this hoof capsule around the coffin bone inside, which means trimming back the horizontal growth. This is the most common problem we run across, how to trim back the horizontal growth and leave sufficient vertical depth to protect the coffin bone. Vertical depth, horizontal growth. Do you know where you are in the foot? There's a lot of discrepancy or misunderstanding about how to trim horizontal growth here and about where to trim it to, how much, the fact that you can even trim it at all. So I'm using the hairline for a guide and the proportional relationships between the fetlock and the ground. Those two things are guiding my overall shape and how much I take back. And my goal is to even out the hoof capsule around the coffin bone. So there's a fairly symmetrical encapsulation of the coffin bone. So I've reduced all the horizontal growth around the shape of the coffin bone using the hairline to judge that shape. Now we're judging how much vertical growth to take. And as we know, when a sole gets too thin, it gets sore. So I want to make sure I keep a nice thick sole on this mare so her foot can be comfortable and strong, absorb concussion better. Want to maintain or increase the volume of this foot and the mass of this foot by leaving enough foot from the bottom. And by reducing the horizontal growth first, it really helps me have a better view of how much vertical growth there is and not overdo it to begin with. And that's just human nature for us. We want to go for it. We want to take something, do something. So by trimming the horizontal first, it really gives me a better realistic view of how much vertical there is and keeps me from my own nature of doing too much. And you can judge a lot of times a good shoer based on what they don't do, not necessarily by what they do. So this mare actually has very little vertical depth. You can see how little I'm taking here. And that makes sense with her measurement, which is already short, and everything else. So trimming that horizontal growth really helped me from being too aggressive underneath. So because I have a lot of experience with this and I've looked at thousands of x-rays before and after my trims, I have a really good idea of where I'm at in relationship to the coffin bone. So I know where I'm at in the foot. And I'm trimming specifically around the coffin bone and the internal structures to maintain or increase vertical depth, reduce breakover to a specific place around the coffin bone. And now I end up with a much stronger foot with a deeper sole which means more vertical depth, which automatically is able to absorb more concussion, increase blood flow, and I end up over time getting a much stronger, healthier foot with a better shape, easier to shape a shoe to, easier and safer to drive nails in. Vertical depth, sufficient vertical depth, increases, it makes everything so much easier. We maintain vertical depth here, but we decrease horizontal growth by quite a bit. And in theory, by x-ray here, our coffin bone is in there so that right in between the first two nail holes or the toe quarters, the coffin bone should, that's the end of the coffin bone here. And we have a uniform hoof wall thickness along the dorsal surface, and we have the same or slightly deeper vertical depth. All right, we're finished up with Miss Bella, and we've accomplished our goals. We reduced horizontal growth, maintained vertical depth. We want to maintain that support, volume, concavity underneath the frog, underneath the coffin bone, navicular joint, all the internal structures. And of course, as you know, 6 weeks from now, we'll be able to really see the results of our work. So we'll should have a nice angle grown out, vertical depth maintained, heel height maintained or increased. There was very little vertical depth after we took away the horizontal growth. It's really important for me to acknowledge that and not over trim her from the bottom. And that's what's going to keep her going super comfortable. So we'll see her in 6 weeks.
I study horses, beauty matched only by their strength. I try and capture a little of that as I move